President confident the war in Ukraine is nearing its end. This is after talks with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and Russia's Vladimir Putin. So the president in the midst of a tough peace negotiation in Europe and in the Middle East this week, meeting with President Zelenskyy Sunday before welcoming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Mar-a-Lago later today. NewsNation's Tom Dempsey, he is live at the White House. So, Tom, good morning. Where does the president believe things stand between these two countries right now?
Hey, Kelly, good morning from the White House. Well, after speaking directly with the Russian leader Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Sunday, President Donald Trump says some sensitive issues still remain when it comes to these negotiations. But he believes a peace deal to end the war between Ukraine and Russia may be closer than ever right now.
There are one or two very thorny issues, very tough issues, but I think we're doing very well. We made a lot of progress today, but really we've made it over the last month. This is not a one-day process deal. This is very complicated stuff.
Sunday's meeting at Mar-a-Lago marked the fifth time this year Volodymyr Zelenskyy has traveled to the United States to meet with President Trump. Zelenskyy says about 90% of his 20-point peace plan was agreed upon, but negotiations still remain sensitive. One of the biggest unresolved issues, Kelly, according to President Trump, centers on what to do with Ukrainian territory currently controlled by Russian forces. That land sits in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine. Other big sticking points include security guarantees for Ukraine. Zelenskyy says Ukraine will drop its NATO bid if Ukraine gets protections, but Russia also wants Ukraine to limit the size of its army moving forward. Over the weekend, though, Russia stepped up drone and missile attacks in Ukraine's capital, killing at least one person and injuring over 24 others. So still a lot of moving parts here, Kelly. Also over the weekend, like we said, President Trump spoke over the phone with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, with the two sides describing that as a productive and business-like phone call, and President Trump saying he believes Putin to be serious about wanting to end the war. Kelly?
And Tom, we know this isn't the only peace deal the president's working on. We mentioned it off the top. What can we expect when he sits down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? That meeting set to happen really in just a few hours now.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be watching that meeting at Mar-a-Lago, Kelly, and to expect the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire plan to be really in the spotlight when these two leaders meet later today. Of course, that ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel got agreed upon earlier this year, but the United States and President Trump, really want to see a lot more progress implementing the deal. Israel has concerns Hamas could be rebuilding its forces and Israeli troops still remain in parts of Gaza. Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently saying the U.S. wants to see a transitional government put in place in Gaza soon. So today, with those talks taking place in just a few hours, expect President Trump and Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu expect that issue, that transitional government, to also be at the center of these talks. Kelly?
Yeah, you would imagine so. All right, Tom Dempsey. Tom, thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.